Am I the a-hole for buying sister's boyfriend lunch? All right, so I guess I should give you even more context to really explain how this whole situation escalated. At first, when my sister and I were younger, I didn't think there would be any issue between us when it came to relationships or boys. Like, I always assumed she'd be comfortable enough with me being around her significant others. After all, when we were kids, we'd joke about each other's crushes all the time, and it was never weird. But once she started getting into more serious relationships, especially with Josh, things started to shift a bit. When she first started dating him, I didn't think much of it. He seemed like a good guy, easygoing, respectful, and he really seemed to care about her. But there were little signs that she was becoming overly protective. For example, if I even mentioned something about him, like if he did something sweet or funny, she'd get defensive and say something like, "Don't try to steal him," or "Don't even think about it." I brushed it off at first because I thought she was just being playful, but now that I look back, I can see how those little comments were adding up. I didn't take her possessiveness seriously, though. It never felt like a red flag at the time because we were close, and I figured she was just being a bit too protective of her relationship. I didn't realize that, over time, it could turn into something bigger. Something where even small gestures like buying McDonald's would be perceived as flirting or coming onto her boyfriend. But what really got to me was the way she started acting. After. I bought Josh the chicken nuggets. I could understand if she was maybe a little annoyed at me or if she just didn't want to deal with it. But the anger she had was so out of left field. It felt like the accusations came from nowhere, and I was just sitting there reading her text in disbelief. I even went over the situation in my head multiple times, trying to figure out where I went wrong. I couldn't think of a single thing I did to warrant this kind of reaction. All I did was pick up food for my sister and her boyfriend. The other thing that really hurt me was the fact that, after the texts started flying, she completely shut down. I tried to talk to her calmly, tried to explain that I didn't have any ill intentions, and that I was just trying to be nice. But every time I responded, it only seemed to make her more upset. She wouldn't even acknowledge my apologies, and it felt like she was holding on to this anger for something I had no control over. It's like she was looking for a reason to be mad at me, and the whole situation just snowballed. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that even though this situation was about the McDonald's, it wasn't really about the McDonald's. My sister and I had gone through so much together in the past, but with Josh, things were starting to feel like a battleground. It's not just this one isolated incident. There were other things before this that made me feel like she was distancing herself from me, especially when it came to her relationship with Josh. She didn't want me to interact with him too much. She didn't want me saying anything that might make her look bad in front of him, and she didn't want me being too friendly with him. The whole territorial thing was getting really obvious, and I just didn't know how to address it without making her feel even more threatened. So here's the tricky part. When I went to my mom for advice, she told me something that I wasn't expecting. She told me that my sister might be dealing with insecurity issues and possibly even fear of abandonment, and that might be why she was reacting this way. Mom suggested that maybe my sister felt like she was losing control of her relationship, or that Josh was drifting away from her, and she was looking for any reason to protect it. She might have seen me buying food for him as an indication that maybe I was trying to take him away from her, even though that was literally the furthest thing from my mind. This hit me pretty hard. I always thought my sister and I were so close that nothing could come between us, but now I was starting to wonder if that bond was becoming more fragile because of her relationship. I mean, we both grew up with the same sense of independence, the same values, but I've been living on my own for a while now, and she's still at home, going through that transition of becoming an adult and figuring out her relationships. I can't even imagine how it must feel to be so vulnerable in a relationship, especially when you're young and still figuring everything out. And maybe that's why she was lashing out, because deep down, she was afraid of losing Josh, or maybe even losing me to Josh, even though neither of those things was happening. After everything calmed down, I thought I'd try to talk to her in person. I wanted to get past all the texting and figure out what was really going on in her head, but when I tried to bring it up, she just got defensive again, and it quickly turned into another argument. I'm honestly at a loss. I don't know how to reassure her when she's so convinced that I have some ulterior motive. At this point, I'm just frustrated. I can't keep apologizing for things I didn't even do, and I can't keep walking on eggshells around my sister and her boyfriend. But at the same time, I don't want to make her feel like I don't care. This whole thing feels so unnecessary. and I just wish she'd stop overreacting. I guess I've been trying to balance being a good sister and respecting her relationship, but it's becoming clear to me that this situation is about a lot more than just me buying chicken nuggets. It's about boundaries, trust, and her own insecurities. But where do I draw the line? How much responsibility do I take for her feelings, especially when I feel like she's misinterpreting my actions? I honestly don't know where to go from here. I'm kind of just letting things cool off, hoping she comes to her senses, but I don't want this lingering over our relationship. So, that's where I'm at right now. I really hope this blows over soon, but who knows? I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate this weird, uncomfortable situation without losing my relationship with her.